Hi, my name is Nancy, and at 48, I find myself caught in a whirlwind I never expected. Every day, I sit at my desk in the pharmaceutical company, trying to focus on the spreadsheets and reports in front of me, but my mind constantly drifts to the past few years and the life I've tried to build. I married Mark when I was 44. He was charming, witty, and previously divorced with no interest in having children, a fact that didn't bother me at the time. Our wedding was simple and private, just close friends and family. I thought we would have a peaceful, stable life together. But life had other plans. It started small. Mark's mood swings, his bouts of lethargy, and his disinterest in things he once enjoyed. I told myself it was just stress from his job and that it would pass. But as the months went by, his behavior became more erratic, and the man I fell in love with started to disappear. I closed my laptop and gathered my things, preparing to leave the office. My heart felt heavy as I walked home, each step amplifying the unease in my stomach. By the time I reached our apartment, I felt a mix of dread and determination. Opening the door, I found Mark in the living room, staring blankly at the television. He didn't even acknowledge my arrival. I swallowed the lump in my throat and placed my bag on the kitchen counter. "Hi, Mark," I said softly, trying to sound upbeat. "How was your day?" No response. His eyes remained fixed on the screen, and I felt a pang of sadness. This wasn't the man I married. Dinner was another quiet affair. I tried to make conversation, but his answers were short and detached. It was like living with a stranger. After dinner, I retreated to the bedroom, my mind racing. I couldn't stop thinking about Dr. Kevin's recent checkup. "Consider your safety, Nancy," he had warned, his voice filled with concern. "Mark's behavior is troubling, and we need to be cautious." His words haunted me, a constant reminder of the reality I was facing. I've always prided myself on being strong and independent, but the past few years have tested me in ways I never imagined. I feel trapped, torn between my love for Mark and the growing fear for my own well-being. As I lay in bed that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The unease in my heart was becoming impossible to ignore. I hoped that things would somehow get better, that the man I married would find his way back to me. But deep down, I knew I had to confront the reality of my situation sooner or later. Morning came too quickly, filled with restless dreams and fleeting moments of clarity. I rose with a heavy heart, ready to face another day of uncertainty. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to find a way through the darkness and reclaim the life I once dreamed of. Dr. Kevin's office is a place I've become all too familiar with. I've lost count of the number of appointments, checkups, and consultations we've had in the past few years. Today's visit felt different, though. There was a sense of urgency in Dr. Kevin's voice that I couldn't ignore. "Consider your safety, Nancy," he said, leaning forward in his chair. His eyes were serious, a stark contrast to his usual calm demeanor. "Mark's behavior is troubling, and we need to be cautious." I nodded, trying to process his words. It wasn't the first time I'd heard concerns about Mark, but hearing it from Dr. Kevin made it feel more real. The drive home was a blur, my mind racing with thoughts and fears I couldn't quite pin down. When I walked into our apartment, Mark was in his usual spot on the couch, staring blankly at the television. He didn't acknowledge my presence, and I felt a pang of sadness. I dropped my bag on the counter and sat down next to him, hoping to reach through the fog that seemed to surround him. "Mark," I said softly, "we need to talk about your appointment today." He turned to me, his eyes vacant. "What about it?" I took a deep breath. "Dr. Kevin is concerned about your behavior. He thinks you might be a danger to yourself or to me." Mark's expression didn't change. "I'm fine," he muttered, turning back to the TV. Frustration bubbled inside me, but I swallowed it down. "Mark, this is serious. We need to figure out what's going on and how to help you." His silence was deafening. I sat there for a few more minutes, hoping he'd say something, anything, to give me a glimpse of the man I married. But he remained silent, and I felt the familiar weight of helplessness settle over me. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Dr. Kevin's words echoed in my mind, a constant reminder of the precarious situation I was in. I loved Mark, but I couldn't ignore the growing fear for my safety. I had to find a way to help him, to bring him back to me, but I didn't know where to start. The next few days were a blur of worry and tension. Mark's behavior continued to deteriorate. He would get lost on his way to the grocery store, or wander off in the middle of the night. I tried to keep a close eye on him, but it was exhausting. Every day felt like a new challenge, a new test of my patience and resolve. One evening, I came home to find our car missing. Panic set in as I called Mark's phone, but there was no answer. I called the police, my heart pounding in my chest. Hours passed before they found him, wandering aimlessly in a nearby park. The relief I felt was short-lived, replaced by a gnawing fear that this was just the beginning. Then came the bank statements. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the numbers in disbelief. Our accounts were nearly empty, drained of the savings we had worked so hard to build. I felt a cold sweat break out across my skin as I realized the implications. Mark had access to our accounts, and I had no idea what he was doing with the money. Desperation drove me to Dr. Kevin's office again, seeking his advice. He suggested involving a specialist, someone who could assess Mark's mental state more thoroughly. I agreed, feeling a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to fix this. As I left the office, I couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. I needed to act quickly, to protect myself and find a way to help Mark before it was too late. The path ahead was unclear, but I knew I couldn't give up. I had to be strong for both of us. The morning after the bank statement revelation, I woke up with a sense of dread. Mark was still asleep, his breathing deep and even, oblivious to the turmoil his actions had caused. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. The feeling of helplessness was overwhelming, but I knew I had to take control. I decided to start by checking our financial records more thoroughly. I spent hours combing through bank statements, credit card transactions, and any other financial documents I could find. The patterns were disturbing. Large withdrawals and unexplained expenses. It was clear that Mark had been siphoning money for some time, but the purpose remained unclear. During a rare moment of clarity, Mark admitted to me that he couldn't remember making the withdrawals. His confusion seemed genuine, but it only added to my frustration. I needed proof, something concrete to understand what was happening. That evening, I installed a small surveillance camera in our living room. It felt invasive, but I was desperate. I needed to know what Mark was doing when I wasn't around. As I set up the camera, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was betraying him, even though I knew it was necessary. The next few days were tense. Mark's behavior grew more erratic, and my anxiety increased. I found myself constantly checking the camera feed, hoping to catch a glimpse of what was really going on. My heart ached every time I saw him, knowing that our once happy life had devolved into this. Then, one night, the camera captured something that changed everything. I watched as Mark rummaged through our home office, pulling out documents and stuffing them into a bag. He moved with a sense of urgency, his actions deliberate and focused. It was as if he were a different person. The next morning, I confronted him with the footage. "Mark, we need to talk," I said, holding my phone up to show him the video. He glanced at the screen, then back at me, his eyes widening in shock. "What is this?" "This is you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You're taking documents and money. Do you even remember doing this?" Mark shook his head, his face pale. "No, Nancy, I swear, I don't remember any of this." His denial was convincing, but the evidence was irrefutable. I felt a mixture of anger and pity, torn between wanting to believe him and knowing I couldn't ignore the truth any longer. Determined to get to the bottom of it, I took the footage to Dr. Kevin. He watched it carefully, his expression grave. "Nancy, this is serious. We need to get Mark assessed by a specialist immediately." I agreed, feeling a sense of urgency. The next few days were a whirlwind of appointments and tests. The specialist, Dr. Mason, was thorough, asking Mark a series of questions and conducting various assessments. I sat through it all, my nerves frayed, hoping for some clarity. Finally, Dr. Mason sat us down with the results. "Mark has been faking symptoms of mental disorders," he said bluntly. "This isn't a case of genuine mental illness. He's been using these symptoms as a cover for fraudulent activities." My heart sank as his words confirmed my worst fears. Mark's history of deceit extended far beyond our marriage. Dr. Mason revealed that Mark had a pattern of this behavior, including a previous incident where he had swindled his former wife in a similar manner. Back home, I confronted Mark again, my emotions a whirlwind of anger and betrayal. Why Mark? Why would you do this to me? He looked at me with tears in his eyes, but I couldn't tell if they were genuine. I don't know, Nancy. I'm so sorry. I never meant for things to go this far. But it was too late. The damage was done and there was no going back. I knew what I had to do. It was time to protect myself and take legal action. I filed for divorce and reported Mark to the police, providing them with all the evidence I had gathered. The day Mark was arrested was one of the hardest days of my life. Watching him being taken away in handcuffs was both a relief and a heartbreak. I felt a sense of closure, knowing I had done what I needed to do to protect myself, but the pain of his betrayal was still raw. As I sat alone in our apartment that night, the reality of my situation began to sink in. My marriage was over, my trust shattered, and my future uncertain. But for the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of hope. I had taken the first step towards reclaiming my life, and I was determined to see it through. The days following Mark's arrest were a blur of legal proceedings and emotional upheaval. I spent hours with lawyers recounting every detail of the past few years, providing evidence of Mark's deceit and fraud. The weight of the betrayal felt heavier with each retelling, but I knew it was necessary to protect myself and seek justice. One afternoon, I received a call from the hospital where Mark had been assessed. Dr. Mason wanted to see me. I drove there with a mixture of dread and curiosity, hoping for some closure but fearing what more I might learn. Dr. Mason greeted me with a somber expression. Nancy, thank you for coming in. There's more you need to know about Mark's past. I nodded, bracing myself. I'm ready. Please tell me everything. Dr. Mason opened a file and began to read. Mark has a documented history of faking mental disorders. His previous wife went through a similar ordeal. He manipulated her into believing he was unwell, draining their finances before disappearing. He resurfaced with you, repeating the same patterns. The room felt like it was closing in on me. The man I thought I knew, the man I married, had a dark hidden past that he had kept from me. How did I not see it? I whispered, more to myself than to Dr. Mason. These individuals are often very skilled at deception, Dr. Mason said gently. It's not your fault, Nancy. You did everything you could with the information you had. His words were meant to comfort, but they only deepened my sense of betrayal. I had trusted Mark, loved him, and he had taken advantage of that trust in the worst possible way. Leaving the hospital, I felt numb. The reality of Mark's actions and the depth of his deceit were almost too much to bear. I drove home in silence, my mind replaying the revelations over and over again. How could someone live with such duplicity? How could I have been so blind? Back at the apartment, I sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by the remnants of our life together. Bills, documents, photographs, all tainted by the knowledge of Mark's betrayal. I knew I needed to take action, to start rebuilding my life, but I felt paralyzed by the enormity of it all. The next morning, I called my lawyer and shared the new information. We need to use this in the case, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. People need to know what he's done. The legal process was grueling. Each court appearance, each piece of evidence presented, felt like another wound reopening. But I was determined to see it through. Mark needed to be held accountable, and I needed to reclaim my life. In the midst of the turmoil, I found a surprising source of strength in my boss, Jacob. He had always been supportive, but now he seemed to go out of his way to check in on me, offering words of encouragement and practical help. His kindness was a balm to my wounded spirit. One evening, after a particularly difficult day in court, Jacob called. How are you holding up, Nancy? He asked, his voice warm and genuine. I'm managing, I replied, appreciating his concern. It's been tough, but I'm getting through it. If you ever need to talk or need anything, don't hesitate to reach out, he said. You don't have to go through this alone. His words were a lifeline. I hadn't realized how much I had isolated myself, trying to handle everything on my own. Jacob's support reminded me that I didn't have to bear this burden alone. As the weeks passed, the case against Mark built momentum. The evidence was overwhelming, and it became clear that he would face significant legal consequences for his actions. The thought of him being held accountable brought a sense of closure, but it didn't erase the pain of what he had done. One day, after a particularly grueling court session, I found myself in Jacob's office. He looked up from his desk, his eyes full of concern. How are you really doing, Nancy? I took a deep breath, letting his question sink in. It's hard, I admitted, but I'm starting to see a way forward. Thanks to you. Jacob smiled, a small, reassuring gesture. You're stronger than you think, Nancy. And remember, you're not alone in this. Leaving his office, I felt a small but significant shift inside me. The road ahead was still long and uncertain, but I had allies, people who cared about me and were willing to help. For the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of hope, a sense that maybe, just maybe, I could rebuild my life from the ashes of Mark's betrayal. As I sat alone in the quiet apartment, the weight of the revelations and the legal battle bore down on me. Mark's arrest had been a turning point, but it was just the beginning of a long road ahead. Determined to ensure justice was served, I knew I had to gather as much evidence as possible to support my case. I started by reviewing all the financial records again. This time, I meticulously documented every suspicious transaction, creating a comprehensive timeline of Mark's fraudulent activities. Each entry was a stark reminder of the deceit that had infiltrated our lives, but I pressed on, driven by a need to see him held accountable. Next, I went through our home office, searching for any hidden documents or clues that might shed more light on Mark's schemes. I opened drawers, sifted through piles of papers, and checked every nook and cranny. It was exhausting and emotionally draining, but I knew it was necessary. One afternoon, while rummaging through a box of old files, I found a hidden folder. Inside were documents detailing various financial schemes, forged signatures, and evidence of multiple fraudulent activities dating back years. My hands trembled as I realized the extent of Mark's deceit. This folder was a goldmine of evidence, but it also made me feel sick to my stomach. With this new trove of documents, I scheduled a meeting with my lawyer. Sitting across from him, I laid out the folder and explained what I had found. "This is everything," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "We need to use this to strengthen our case." My lawyer nodded, his expression serious. "This is significant, Nancy. It will definitely help. We'll make sure this is included in the proceedings." Leaving the lawyer's office, I felt a sense of grim satisfaction. Every piece of evidence brought me closer to the truth and to the justice Mark deserved. But it also deepened the emotional toll. The man I had loved and trusted had betrayed me in ways I couldn't have imagined. Despite the pain, I found solace in small moments of normalcy. Jacob continued to be a pillar of support, his kindness a constant presence. We had started to have regular lunches together, a welcome distraction from the chaos of the legal battle. One afternoon, as we sat in a cozy cafe near the office, Jacob looked at me with a thoughtful expression. "Nancy, have you thought about what you'll do once all this is over?" I paused, contemplating his question. "I'm not sure," I admitted. "It's hard to think beyond the immediate mess, but I know I want to move forward to rebuild my life." Jacob nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "You have incredible strength, Nancy. I have no doubt you'll find your way. And you know you have my support whatever you decide." His words were a balm to my weary soul. For the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to think about the future, to imagine a life beyond the shadows of Mark's betrayal. As the court date approached, the tension and anxiety grew. But I was ready. I had the evidence, the support of my lawyer, and the unwavering belief that justice would prevail. The surveillance footage, the financial records, and the hidden documents all painted a clear picture of Mark's deceit. The day of the trial, I stood outside the courthouse taking a deep breath. Jacob was there, offering a reassuring smile. "You've got this, Nancy. Just be yourself and tell the truth." His presence gave me the strength I needed. Inside the courtroom, I watched as the evidence was presented, each piece reinforcing the narrative of Mark's fraud. I testified, recounting the emotional and financial toll his actions had taken on me. Mark sat across from me, his expression unreadable. For a moment I felt a pang of sadness, remembering the man I had once loved. But it was quickly replaced by a steely resolve. This was about justice, about reclaiming my life. When the verdict was finally announced, guilty on multiple counts of fraud and deception, I felt a wave of relief. It was over. Mark would face the consequences of his actions, and I could begin to heal. As I walked out of the courtroom, Jacob by my side, I felt a sense of closure. The road ahead was still uncertain, but I had taken the first step toward rebuilding my life. With Jacob's support and the knowledge that justice had been served, I was ready to face whatever came next. The courtroom's heavy doors closed behind me, the echo of the verdict still resonating in my mind. Mark had been found guilty, and while the pain of his betrayal was still fresh, I felt a newfound sense of closure. Now it was time to take the next steps in reclaiming my life. Back at the apartment, I gathered the remaining evidence and documents, ready to move forward with the legal proceedings. The divorce papers needed to be filed, and I was determined to ensure that Mark's actions had lasting consequences. I contacted my lawyer, arranging another meeting to finalize the paperwork and discuss the next steps. That evening, as I sat at the kitchen table, the weight of the past few months began to lift. The apartment felt emptier, but there was a sense of peace in the solitude. I knew I was doing the right thing, even though it was one of the hardest decisions I had ever made. The next morning, I met with my lawyer, a tall, sharp-eyed woman named Lisa who had been a steadfast ally throughout the ordeal. She reviewed the documents I brought and nodded approvingly. "This is all very thorough, Nancy. You've done a great job gathering everything. We'll proceed with the divorce filing immediately." I felt a mixture of relief and sadness as I signed the papers. This was the end of my marriage, a chapter of my life closing. But it was also the beginning of something new, a chance to rebuild and find myself again. Over the following weeks, the legal process moved forward. Mark's assets were frozen, and restitution for his fraudulent activities was arranged. Each step brought me closer to a sense of justice and closure. The media coverage of the trial had brought attention to his actions, and I received messages of support from friends, colleagues, and even strangers who had heard my story. During this time, Jacob remained a constant source of support. We continued to meet for lunch, his presence a comforting reminder that I wasn't alone. One afternoon, as we sat in our usual cafe, he looked at me with a gentle smile. "Nancy, I'm proud of you. You've handled all of this with incredible strength." "Thank you, Jacob," I said, feeling a warmth spread through me. "I couldn't have done it without your support. You've been my rock through all of this." He reached across the table, his hand resting lightly on mine. "I'm here for you always, and I want you to know I see a future for us beyond this. When you're ready." His words took me by surprise, and I felt a flutter of hope. The idea of a future with Jacob was something I hadn't allowed myself to consider fully, but now it felt like a real possibility. As the legal proceedings came to a close, I started to think about what I wanted for my future. The pharmaceutical company had been my career for so long, but I felt a desire to explore new opportunities, to find a path that was truly mine. One evening, I sat in the apartment, looking through old photographs and mementos. Among them, I found a journal I had kept when I was younger, filled with dreams and aspirations I had long forgotten. Reading through the pages, I felt a spark of inspiration. There was so much I wanted to do, so many possibilities waiting to be explored. With the divorce finalized and Mark's legal issues settled, I decided it was time for a change. I spoke with my manager about taking a leave of absence, explaining that I needed time to rediscover myself and figure out my next steps. They were supportive, understanding the toll the past months had taken on me. During this time, Jacob and I grew closer. We spent more time together, sharing our hopes and dreams for the future. His kindness and patience helped me heal, and I began to see a future filled with possibilities. One sunny afternoon, as we walked through a park, Jacob turned to me, a serious expression on his face. "Nancy, I know you've been through a lot, and I don't want to rush you, but I care about you deeply, and I see a future for us together. When you're ready, I'd like to take that next step." I looked into his eyes, filled with sincerity and hope. For the first time in a long while, I felt truly ready to move forward. "Jacob, I care about you too, and I'm ready. Let's take that step together." As we continued our walk hand in hand, I felt a sense of peace and anticipation. The past had been painful, but it had also led me to this moment, to a new beginning with someone who truly cared for me. The journey ahead was still uncertain, but I knew I wasn't alone. With Jacob by my side, I was ready to embrace the future, to rebuild my life and find happiness once more. With the divorce finalized and Mark behind bars, a strange quiet settled over my life. It was as if the storm had passed, leaving a surreal calm in its wake. The apartment felt emptier, but it also felt like a clean slate. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of freedom. In the weeks following the trial, I focused on putting my life back together. I started by tackling the practicalities, closing joint accounts, securing my finances, and making necessary changes to my living arrangements. Each task, though small, felt like a step toward reclaiming control over my life. One of the biggest challenges was dealing with the emotional aftermath. The betrayal, the lies, and the manipulation had left deep scars. I found myself replaying moments in my mind, questioning everything. But I knew that dwelling on the past wouldn't help me heal. I needed to look forward to find new purpose and meaning. Jacob was a constant presence, his support unwavering. We continued to spend time together, and his kindness helped me navigate through the darkest moments. One evening, he invited me to a small dinner party at his home, a gathering of close friends who had become my extended support network. As I mingled with the guests, I felt a sense of belonging and warmth that I had missed for so long. Jacob's friends welcomed me with open arms, their genuine kindness a balm to my wounded spirit. The evening was filled with laughter, good food, and the kind of conversations that make you feel truly connected. Later that night, as the party wound down, Jacob and I found ourselves alone on his patio, the cool evening air filled with the sounds of the city. He turned to me, his eyes reflecting the soft glow of the patio lights. "Nancy, I've seen you grow so much stronger over these past months," he said, his voice filled with admiration. "You've faced so much and come out the other side. I'm proud of you." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. "Thank you, Jacob. I couldn't have done it without you. Your support has meant the world to me." He took my hand in his touch reassuring. "I'm here for you always, and I want you to know whatever you decide to do next, I'll be right here by your side." As I looked into his eyes, I felt a surge of hope and possibility. The future, once shrouded in uncertainty, now seemed filled with potential. I realized that it was time to start thinking about my dreams and aspirations, to rediscover the passions I had set aside for so long. The next morning, I woke with a sense of determination. I dug out my old journal, the one filled with dreams and goals from years past. Flipping through the pages, I felt a spark of inspiration. There were so many things I wanted to do, so many experiences waiting to be explored. One of my long-forgotten passions was writing. As a young woman, I had dreamed of becoming an author, of telling stories that would touch people's hearts. Life had taken me down a different path, but the dream had never truly faded. With newfound clarity, I decided to take a leap of faith and pursue my passion for writing. I enrolled in a writing workshop, eager to hone my skills and connect with others who shared my love for storytelling. The workshop was a revelation, a place where I could express myself freely and explore new ideas. The support and feedback from fellow writers helped me grow in confidence and creativity. As I immersed myself in my writing, I began to feel a sense of purpose and fulfillment that had been missing for so long. The stories I crafted were a way to process my experiences, to turn pain into art. Each word, each sentence was a step toward healing and self-discovery. Jacob was my biggest cheerleader, always encouraging me to follow my dreams. His belief in me gave me the courage to keep going, even when doubts crept in. We spent many evenings together, him reading my latest drafts and offering thoughtful feedback. One night, as we sat in his living room, I shared a story I had been working on. It was deeply personal, a reflection of my journey and the strength I had found along the way. As Jacob read, I watched his face, hoping my words would resonate with him. When he finished, he looked up at me, his eyes filled with emotion. "Nancy, this is incredible. Your writing is powerful, moving. You have a gift." Tears welled up in my eyes at his praise. "Thank you, Jacob. That means so much coming from you." He took my hand, his grip firm and reassuring. "You're going to do amazing things, Nancy. I believe in you." As I sat there, basking in his support and the sense of accomplishment from my writing, I realized that I had truly begun to rebuild my life. The pain and betrayal were still there, but they were no longer the defining features of my story. I had found strength, purpose, and love in the aftermath, and I knew that the future held endless possibilities. With Jacob by my side and my passion for writing reignited, I felt ready to face whatever came next. The journey had been long and difficult, but it had also led me to a place of hope and new beginnings. And for that I was deeply grateful. Each new day brought with it a sense of renewal, The storm of my past had cleared, leaving behind the fresh, fertile ground upon which I could rebuild my life. My writing had become a sanctuary, a place where I could pour out my soul and transform my experiences into stories that resonated with others. Jacob continued to be my steadfast companion, his presence a constant reminder that I was not alone in this journey. Our relationship deepened with each passing day, filled with moments of genuine connection and mutual support. He was my rock, and I was his, and together we faced the future with hope and determination. One sunny Saturday, Jacob suggested we take a trip to the countryside. "I know a place where we can get away from it all," he said, his eyes twinkling with excitement. "Just you, me, and nature. What do you think?" I smiled, feeling a surge of warmth and gratitude. "That sounds perfect, Jacob. I could use a break from everything." We packed a picnic and drove out to a secluded spot by a tranquil lake. The scenery was breathtaking, with the sun casting a golden glow over the water, and the gentle rustling of leaves creating a soothing backdrop. As we settled on a blanket, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. "This place is beautiful," I said, taking in the serene surroundings. "Thank you for bringing me here." Jacob smiled, his gaze soft and tender. "I wanted to share it with you. You deserve a moment of tranquility after everything you've been through." We spent the afternoon talking, laughing, and simply enjoying each other's company. The worries and stresses of the past few months seemed to melt away, replaced by a sense of contentment and joy. As the sun began to set, casting a warm orange hue over the lake, Jacob turned to me, his expression serious yet hopeful. "Nancy, I've been thinking a lot about us," he said, taking my hand in his. "About our future. I know you've been through so much, and I want to be here for you in every way possible. I care about you deeply, and I see a future together. When you're ready, I want to take that next step with you." His words filled my heart with a mixture of emotions, gratitude, hope, and a deep, abiding love. "Jacob, I care about you too," I said, my voice steady despite the tears welling up in my eyes. "You've been my rock, my support through everything. And I'm ready. Let's take that step together." Jacob's smile was radiant, and he pulled me into a warm embrace. As we held each other, I felt a sense of certainty and clarity that had eluded me for so long. The future, once shrouded in uncertainty and fear, now seemed filled with promise and possibility. In the days that followed, Jacob and I began to make plans for our future. We talked about our dreams and aspirations, the things we wanted to achieve both individually and as a couple. It was a time of excitement and anticipation, a new chapter in our lives unfolding before us. One evening, as we sat in my apartment, Jacob surprised me with a small wrapped box. "I have something for you," he said, his eyes twinkling with mischief. I opened the box to find a beautiful, handcrafted journal. Its cover was adorned with intricate designs, and the pages were thick and inviting. "Jacob, it's beautiful," I said, touched by the thoughtful gift. "I thought you might like a new journal for your writing," he said, his smile warm. "A fresh start for your new beginnings." Tears welled up in my eyes as I hugged him tightly. "Thank you, Jacob. This means so much to me." With Jacob's encouragement, I continued to pursue my passion for writing. I attended more workshops, joined a writer's group, and even started working on a novel inspired by my own journey. The support and feedback from fellow writers fueled my creativity, and I found myself growing more confident in my abilities. Jacob was always there, reading my drafts, offering suggestions, and cheering me on. His belief in me was unwavering, and it gave me the strength to keep going, even when doubts crept in. Our relationship flourished, built on a foundation of trust, respect, and mutual support. As I delved deeper into my writing, I began to receive positive feedback from readers and peers. My stories resonated with others, touching their hearts and minds. It was a deeply fulfilling experience, and I felt a renewed sense of purpose and direction. One day, as I sat at my desk, surrounded by notes and drafts, I received an email that took my breath away. A publishing house had read one of my stories and was interested in discussing the possibility of a book deal. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding with excitement and disbelief. "Jacob, you won't believe this," I called out, my voice shaking with emotion. A publisher is interested in my work. Jacob rushed over, his face lighting up with joy. Nancy, that's amazing. I knew you could do it. I'm so proud of you. His words filled me with a sense of accomplishment and pride. The journey had been long and arduous, but it had led me to this moment, a moment of triumph and validation. With Jacob by my side and my passion for writing ignited, I felt ready to embrace the future with open arms. As we celebrated the news, I realized that I had truly come full circle. The pain and betrayal of the past had been transformed into strength and resilience. I had found love, purpose, and hope in the aftermath, and I knew that the best was yet to come. With Jacob's unwavering support and my determination to succeed, I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The future was bright, and I was eager to see where this new chapter of my life would take me. The email from the publisher marked a turning point in my life. It was the validation I had been longing for, proof that my stories resonated with others and had the potential to make an impact. Jacob's unwavering support continued to be my anchor, and together, we faced the future with renewed hope and excitement. With the prospect of a book deal on the horizon, I threw myself into my writing with even greater passion. Each day was a blend of creativity and determination, as I worked on refining my manuscript and developing new ideas. Jacob was always there, offering his feedback and encouragement, his belief in me unshakable. One evening after a long day of writing, Jacob and I sat together on the couch, discussing the future. "So, what's next on the agenda for the famous author?" he asked teasingly. I laughed, feeling a warmth spread through me. "Well, I need to finalize the manuscript and prepare for the meeting with the publisher. It's all happening so fast, but I'm excited." Jacob smiled, his eyes filled with pride. "You're going to do great, Nancy. I have no doubt about that. And no matter what happens, I'm here for you." His words were more than just reassurance. They were a promise. In Jacob, I had found not only a partner but a confidant, someone who believed in me unconditionally. Our bond grew stronger each day, built on trust, respect, and shared dreams. As the weeks passed, I continued to work on my manuscript, polishing it to perfection. The meeting with the publisher was approaching, and I felt a mixture of nerves and excitement. Jacob's support was a constant source of strength, and his presence reassured me that I wasn't facing this journey alone. The day of the meeting arrived, and Jacob insisted on accompanying me for moral support. We arrived at the publishing house, a sleek modern building that seemed to pulse with creative energy. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the important discussion ahead. Inside, we were greeted by Sarah, the editor who had shown interest in my work. She was warm and welcoming, her enthusiasm for my manuscript evident. "Nancy, it's wonderful to finally meet you in person. We're very excited about your work." The meeting went better than I could have imagined. Sarah and her team loved my manuscript and offered me a book deal on the spot. I felt a rush of joy and disbelief as I signed the contract, officially becoming a published author. It was a dream come true, a testament to the hard work and perseverance that had brought me to this moment. After the meeting, Jacob and I celebrated with a quiet dinner at our favorite restaurant. As we toasted to the future, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey that had led me here. "I couldn't have done this without you, Jacob," I said, raising my glass. "Thank you for believing in me." Jacob smiled, his eyes shining with pride. "Nancy, you did this. Your talent, your hard work. It's all you. I'm just happy to be here to support you." Our relationship continued to flourish, each day bringing us closer together. We spent weekends exploring new places, sharing our hopes and dreams, and simply enjoying each other's company. Trust and communication were the cornerstones of our relationship, and we made a conscious effort to nurture them. One evening, as we walked through the park near my apartment, Jacob turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Nancy, I've been thinking about something," he began, his voice gentle. I looked at him, curious. "What is it, Jacob?" He took a deep breath, his eyes filled with sincerity. "I love you, Nancy, and I want to build a future with you. I know we've both been through a lot, but I believe we can create something beautiful together. What do you think about moving in together?" His words took me by surprise, but in the best possible way. I felt a surge of happiness and excitement at the prospect of taking this next step in our relationship. "Jacob, I love you too. I said, my heart swelling with emotion. I think that's a wonderful idea. I'd love to build a future with you. As we walked hand in hand discussing plans for our new life together, I felt a sense of completeness and joy. The past had been filled with pain and betrayal, but it had also led me to this moment, to a relationship built on love and trust. Moving in together was a new chapter in our story, one that promised adventure and growth. We spent the next few weeks planning and preparing, merging our lives in a way that felt natural and right. It was a time of excitement and anticipation, a testament to the love and partnership we had built. As we settled into our new home, I continued to work on my book, preparing for its release. The support from Jacob and our shared vision for the future gave me the strength and inspiration to keep going. Our life together was a beautiful blend of creativity, love, and mutual respect. The release of my book was a milestone that marked not just a professional achievement, but a personal victory as well. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive, and I felt a deep sense of fulfillment and pride. Jacob was by my side through it all, his unwavering belief in me a constant source of encouragement. One evening as we sat on the porch of our new home, watching the sunset, Jacob turned to me with a smile. Nancy, this is just the beginning. There's so much more to come, and I can't wait to see what the future holds for us. I leaned into him, feeling the warmth of his embrace and the promise of the days ahead. I feel the same way, Jacob. We've come so far, and I know we'll face whatever comes next together. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over our future, I felt a sense of peace and anticipation. The journey had been long and challenging, but it had brought me to this moment. A moment filled with love, hope, and the promise of a new beginning. With Jacob by my side and a world of possibilities ahead, I was ready to embrace whatever the future held. The day of my book launch was finally here. The past months had been a whirlwind of writing, editing, and preparations, but now it was all coming together. As I stood in the bookstore surrounded by shelves filled with my debut novel, I felt a mixture of nerves and excitement. This moment, a culmination of hard work and resilience, marked the start of a new chapter in my life. Jacob was by my side, his presence a comforting anchor amidst the flurry of activity. The store was bustling with friends, family, and even a few fans who had heard about the book through early reviews. The air was filled with anticipation, and I felt a surge of pride as I looked around at the faces of those who had supported me throughout this journey. The event began with a few words from Sarah, my editor, who introduced me with genuine enthusiasm. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to present Nancy Thompson, a remarkable new voice in literature. Her journey to this moment has been one of strength, perseverance, and incredible talent. Please join me in welcoming her. The applause was overwhelming, and as I stepped up to the podium, I took a deep breath, allowing the moment to sink in. I looked out at the audience, my heart swelling with gratitude. Thank you everyone for being here today. I began, my voice steady. This book represents more than just a story. It's a testament to the power of resilience and the importance of hope. Writing has been my way of processing and healing from the challenges I've faced, and I am incredibly grateful for the support of my loved ones, especially Jacob, who has been my rock through it all. Jacob smiled at me from the front row, his eyes shining with pride. I continued, sharing a few passages from the book and talking about the inspiration behind my writing. The audience was engaged and responsive, their warmth and encouragement palpable. After the reading, the floor was open for questions. Hands shot up, and I spent the next half hour discussing my writing process, the themes of the book, and my plans for future projects. It was exhilarating to connect with readers and to see how my words had resonated with them. As the event came to a close, I signed copies of my book, exchanging words of gratitude with each person who approached the table. The support and enthusiasm from everyone were overwhelming, and I felt a profound sense of fulfillment. That evening, Jacob and I returned home, exhausted but elated. We sat together on the couch, reflecting on the day's events. "You were amazing, Nancy," Jacob said, his voice filled with admiration. "I'm so proud of you." "Thank you, Jacob," I replied, leaning into him. "I couldn't have done it without you. Your support means everything to me." In the weeks that followed, the positive reception of my book continued to grow. Reviews poured in, and readers reached out to share their thoughts and experiences. It was deeply rewarding to know that my story had touched so many lives. With the success of my book, new opportunities began to emerge. Invitations to speak at literary events and workshops started to fill my calendar. I embraced these opportunities, eager to share my journey and inspire others. Jacob and I also began to explore our future together more concretely. We talked about our dreams and aspirations, making plans for the life we wanted to build. Our relationship, grounded in trust and mutual respect, continued to flourish. One evening, as we sat on the porch of our home, watching the sun set over the horizon, Jacob turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Nancy, there's something I want to ask you," he said, reaching into his pocket. My heart skipped a beat as he pulled out a small velvet box. "Nancy, you are the love of my life, my partner in every sense. Will you marry me?" Tears welled up in my eyes as I looked at the man who had been my unwavering support and greatest advocate. "Yes, Jacob," I said, my voice choked with emotion. "Yes, I will marry you." As he slipped the ring onto my finger, I felt a surge of joy and contentment. This was the beginning of a new chapter, a future filled with love, hope, and endless possibilities. Our wedding was a beautiful, intimate affair, surrounded by close friends and family. It was a celebration of our love and the journey we had taken to find each other. The day was filled with laughter, joy, and the promise of a bright future together. In the months that followed, Jacob and I continued to build our life together. We traveled, explored new interests, and supported each other's dreams. My writing career flourished, and Jacob's unwavering belief in me continued to be a source of inspiration and strength. As we stood on the porch one evening, looking out at the world we had built together, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. The journey had been long and filled with challenges, but it had led me to this moment. A life filled with love, purpose, and endless possibilities. With Jacob by my side and a future brimming with promise, I knew that we could face whatever came next. Our love was a testament to the power of resilience and the strength of the human spirit. And as we embraced the new beginning, I felt a deep sense of peace and happiness, ready to write the next chapter of our incredible journey together.